All right, lesson 38 here. 1 Kings chapter 12. And this is about the reign of Jeroboam. So, God had prevented a civil war from happening between the 10 tribes of Israel and the tribe of Judah. The people in the north are ruled by Jeroboam. They've selected him to be their king and leader, not selected by God. God is in control of all things, but God had made it so that Rehoboam should have been their king. But they forsake the Lord, they forsake the temple, they forsake, many of them, not every man head for head throughout Israel, for there are many of God's people in Israel, but the leaders have chosen to forsake the line of Christ. Alright, so 1 Kings chapter 12, but we start towards the end. Okay? Starting at verse 25, what did Jeroboam do now as ruler? What kind of king was he? What kind of man? He's starting out. He's a whole new king. He doesn't have a palace to go to like Rehoboam does. He doesn't have a temple for his people to worship at like Rehoboam does, because the people should have been going to Jerusalem. But they have to start from scratch. So let's see what he does as ruler. Verse 25 of 1 Kings chapter 12. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in Mount Ephraim and dwelt therein, and went out from thence and built Penuel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, Now shall the kingdom return to the house of David. If this people go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of this people turn again to their Lord, even to Rehoboam the king of Judah. And they shall kill me, and go again to Rehoboam king of Judah. Whereupon the king took counsel, and made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold, thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land. And he set the one in Bethel, and the other he put in Dan. And this thing became a sin. For the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan. And he made an house of high places, and made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not of the sons of Levi. And Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah. And he offered upon the altar. So did he in Bethel, sacrificing unto the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places, which he had made. So he offered upon the altar, which he had made in Bethel, the 15th day of the 8th month, even in the month which he had devised of his own heart, and ordained a feast unto the children of Israel. And he offered upon the altar, and burnt incense. So what does Jeroboam do here at the beginning? Well, the first was, he strengthened the cities of Shechem and Penuel. Shechem becomes the royal city. Just like Jerusalem is the royal city of Judah, Shechem becomes the royal city of the kingdom of the north. And in addition to that, he sets up 2 other important cities. Okay? Now, what was King Jeroboam concerned about? Why would he make some important cities? The reason was, he was afraid that the people, when they would go back to Jerusalem, if the people of Israel would go back to Jerusalem and properly sacrifice to the Lord there at the temple, which was the proper place to worship, and offer sacrifices on the altars of burnt offerings, which is where they should have been doing things, their hearts might change and they might decide, I can't go along with this Jeroboam as king. I need to leave and head down south and live there. That is where I should live. What a powerful picture for us. Jeroboam was no foolish man. Here were a bunch of people who had sinned. They had left the worship of the Lord. And he knew full well that there would be guilt in them at the beginning. Their consciences would prick their hearts. And if any of them then would return back to Jerusalem, go all the way down to the temple, and then arrive there, and then pray to God for forgiveness of their sins, they would realize that God had forgiven their sin of leaving the proper worship of God, and they would probably leave out of Israel and move to Judah. And once again, Rehoboam would be their king. And that didn't sound good to Jeroboam. He didn't want to lose that. So what does he do instead? He sets up 2 cities, Dan and Bethel. Bethel being a pretty wise city. Bethel is a special place. If you remember, it is a place called, the name means house of God, where Jacob got his dream on the way to his uncle Laban. Okay? So Bethel would seem like a prime place to put one of these golden calves. So Jeroboam here takes an idea from the people when they are wandering in the wilderness in Aaron. I'll set up a golden calf. The people will worship this golden calf here. Here is your God, O Israel. Use this object to offer sacrifices to. It will be in the place of your God. You don't have to go all the way down to Jerusalem. This here is good enough. In Dan and in Bethel, one of the cities in the north and one in the south, to make it easy for the people to try to get to them. Okay? So he did that, and then in addition to that, he wanted to make a different feast, similar to the Feast of Tabernacles, but he put it in a different month. Instead of it being in the 7th month on the 15th day, it was put into the 8th month, so that the people wouldn't want to go back to Jerusalem to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, because that might prick their heart, and they might say, oh, look at our calendars. Well, next week is the Feast of Tabernacles. And the husband and wife might decide, well, we've got to get things ready and pack up the children and let's start heading down to Jerusalem. But no, he changed it so that in the land of Israel it would be on the 8th month. So, we don't have to travel all the way back to Jerusalem. We have the Feast of Tabernacles here in Israel. Like I said, that's exactly what the devil wants when he causes us to sin. So you've sinned against maybe your mother or your father. And now you're a little bit embarrassed to go in front of them, or you're a little bit afraid. Are they going to remain angry at me? Are they going to forgive me? Are they going to treat me any differently? Well, the devil uses that, because what does he want to do? He wants to drive a stake between you and your parents to split you apart so that you don't get along with each other, because a good, godly covenant family gets along with one another. And so what does he want to do? He wants to separate you. And then what does he want to do? Well, he knows this. The devil knows that when we pray to God, when we go to his word in prayer, or read his word, or when we return to the house of God, in all of those places, God uses them so that in our lives we go, that sin I did against mom and dad, that was pretty bad. And I know I've been avoiding them. I didn't want to talk to them about it. Even though we've dealt with the issue, I need to go back to them. And I think I need to apologize again to them. Or I need to change my attitude, because that's what God's word teaches me. And by praying to God, he's given me peace. By hearing his word in his house, God has given me the food that I needed. So what does the devil want me to do? The devil, if I have conflict in my life with people that I should be getting along with, the devil wants me to drive me away from them. So he doesn't. He wants me to avoid reading the Bible. He wants to put in my heart to avoid praying to God. He wants to put in my heart to avoid going into the house of worship, because if I do those things, the devil knows what will happen. The Lord will use those blessings as a means of grace, so that I realize the way that I'm living, the way I'm acting, the way I'm behaving is not a good way. And Jeroboam knew that. So he did not want the people to go back to Jerusalem, where they would have the proper worship of the Lord. And then Jeroboam probably also thought about this. Well, this is how it goes. Maybe a young couple, just married, was living in the land of Israel, and their consciences were pricking them that they should go back to the land of Jerusalem and worship God there. But their king Jeroboam had set these other, so they go to these other places. But still, when they offer a sacrifice over here in front of this golden calf, And when they bow down to this golden calf, in their hearts it's still pricked. They still don't feel right. It feels dirty. It feels wrong to them. This is not how I worship God. But it's the way everyone else is doing it, and it makes it feel good. And Jeroboam knew if he could just keep that family, when that young family began to have children, the children wouldn't know any better. To the children, they would think, this golden calf is God. This is how I worship God, through this altar over here. They never even knew about Jerusalem. And then when the parents die, does he have to worry about these children having a pricked heart and conscience anymore? No. And that's the danger that we live in too, that we need to be careful of. That's why it's important for parents to demand. It says, well, Mom and Dad are going to go to church. I don't know, Amber, you can stay home and do whatever you want. We'll leave it up to you. Okay? Because sooner or later, when the children aren't taught the right way, they just think, well, this wrong way is the way to do things. They're never going to feel guilty. Their hearts aren't going to be pricked. Unless they maybe pick up the word of the Lord by God's grace and study it and understand it and realize that the way that Mom and Dad showed me was not the right way. Jeroboam is wise here. All right. So what happens at that altar? Well, something interesting happens. While Jeroboam is here at Bethel offering sacrifices on this altar, a prophet comes from Judah. He travels all the way to the north, up to Bethel, and he speaks. But he doesn't look at Jeroboam in the eyes and speaks. He instead oddly speaks to the altar. And what does he say to that altar? What does he tell? He foretells of King Josiah one day would burn the bones of idolatrous priests on this here altar set up in Bethel. That was what he prophesied about. One day, there will be a king, King Josiah, who will take all of these ungodly priests, not these ones specifically, but the ones that will be alive in his day, and he will take their bones and put them on this altar and burn them there because they are wicked and sinful. These are not priests. That was the prophecy. Now, Jeroboam, he didn't really care. That's a prophecy. It's not going to affect me. Well, then this prophet gave a sign to show that the words that he said would come true. And the sign was this. This altar will break. And when it breaks and falls apart, ashes will come pouring out of it. A sign of God's punishment. When one sinned back in the Bible days, they would often rend their clothes and they would put ashes on their head. A sign of mourning of their sins. And that's what would happen here. Jeroboam, now he was furious at this prophet. And so what did he do? He reached out his arm, probably to grab this prophet, and he couldn't move it. It was stuck. No matter what he did or how he pushed on it, his arm was stuck. He could not move his arm. It was left in that locked position. Okay? And what happened while his arm was in the locked position? That altar split apart and ashes began to pour forth. The sign came true. Jeroboam cries out to the Lord through the prophet. Prophet, pray to the God for me. The prophet does. And Jeroboam's arm is restored back to its normal way. But Jeroboam must have not been very impressed by this sign and the wonder that happened to his arm, because did he turn from his ways? Did he say, all right, I am the leader of you 10 tribes, and now I realize my sin and my wickedness and what we've done. Let us march back to Rehoboam, ask for forgiveness, and let us unite as one great nation. You know, Jeroboam didn't do that. So, although he probably it influenced him somewhat, it wasn't enough. Okay? So, Jeroboam, now he sees this prophet here. Well, this is an important person. And he tried to gain his friendliness. Why don't you come to my palace as reward? Let me give you a feast and all kinds of things. Because you've restored my arm. Why don't you come with me? And this prophet said, no. No, I could not go because the Lord forbade me to go anywhere else. The Lord told me to go straight north to Bethel, come to the altar, give the prophecy, show the sign, turn around, and go straight back to Judah. So he says no to the king, and he begins to march back south, okay, towards Judah. But then something else happens along the way. That's in the next chapter. So look at 1 Kings chapter 13, starting at verse 11. What's going to happen on the way to this prophet? It says verse 11, Now there dwelt an old prophet in Bethel, and his sons came and told him all the works that the man of God had done that day in Bethel, the words which he had spoken unto the king. Them they told also to their father. And the father said unto them, What way went he? For his sons had seen which way the man of God went, which came from Judah. And he said unto his son, Saddle me the ass. So they saddled him the ass, and he rode thereon. And he went after the man of God, and found him sitting under an oak tree. And he said unto them, Art thou the man of God that camest from Judah? And he said, I am. Then said he unto him, Come home with me, and eat bread. And he said, I may not return with thee, nor go in with thee, neither will I eat bread, nor drink water with thee in this place. For it was said to me by the word of the Lord, Thou shalt eat no bread, nor drink no water there, nor turn again to go by the way that thou camest. He said unto him, meaning the old man, I am a prophet also as thou art. And an angel spake unto me by the word of the Lord, saying, Bring him back with thee into thine house, that he may eat bread and drink water. But he lied unto him, the old man did. So he went back with him and did eat bread in his house and drink water. So, there was an older prophet, probably just on the outskirts of Bethel, and his two sons come in and say, Father, Father, there was another prophet in the land, just like you, who spoke to the Lord, and he did some great signs and wonders. And they told Father all about it, and Father said, Well, which way did he go? And the boy said, Well, he went back toward Judah down that way. It was probably a main road that this young man, this prophet, was traveling on. So that the old man got on his donkey and took off after this young prophet. And when he catches up and he finds the young prophet, or he sees a young man at least, he doesn't know this prophet, but he sees a young man sitting by the tree. Are you the man who did all the wonders in Bethel? Well, yes, I am. He says, Well, I too am a prophet. I want you to come to my house with me. Let's eat bread together and drink water. And the prophet says, No, nay, my Lord. The Lord told me I cannot drink anything in this land, and I can't eat anything in this land, and I can't go into anyone's house by the wayside and stop and stay. I need to go straight there and straight back. And the prophet lies. The old prophet lies. The old prophet says, Well, I'm a prophet too. I told you that. And the Lord came to me, and the Lord said to me that I should do this thing for you. So you have to trust me, because now the Lord changed his mind, and he said he wants you to do this. Now, if the young prophet was a wise prophet, what he would have done is he would have said, Well, hold on, old man, let me inquire of the Lord. And he would have prayed to the Lord and inquired of the Lord, Lord, what do you want me to do? You have told me this. This old man has said this. What should I do? And the Lord would have made it visible, obvious to this man what he needed to do, which was return to Judah, that this man was lying. But he failed to inquire of the Lord, so he didn't know properly and rightly what he should do, and he foolishly accepted this invitation and went to this man's house. God doesn't contradict himself. God won't tell him one thing and then another. Okay, God would have revealed it to him if he wanted that. Or he should have prayed about it, and then God would have revealed through that prayer which way he wanted him to go. So in the end, what happens to this prophet? Well, verse 20 continues on. And it came to pass, as they sat at the table, that the word of the Lord came unto the prophet that brought him back, and cried unto the man. So it comes to the old man. Thus saith the Lord, Forasmuch as thou hast disobeyed the mouth of the Lord, and hast not kept the commandment which the Lord thy God commanded thee, but camest back, and hast eaten bread and drunk water in the place of which the Lord did say to thee, Eat no bread, and drink no water, thy carcass, so thy body, shall not come unto the sepulchre of thy fathers. And it came to pass, after he had eaten bread, and after he had drunk, that he saddled for him the ass, to wit, for the prophet whom he had brought back. And when he was gone, a lion met him by the way, and slew him. And his carcass was cast in the way, and the ass stood by, and the lion also stood by the carcass. And behold, men passed by, and saw the carcass cast in the way, and the lion standing by the carcass. And they came and told it in the city where the old prophet dwelt. And when the prophet that brought him back from the way heard thereof, he said, It is the old man of God who was disobedient unto the word of the Lord. Therefore the Lord hath delivered him unto the lion, which had torn him and slain him, according to the word which he spake unto him. And he spake unto his son, saying, Saddle me an ass. And they saddled him. And when he went and found the carcass cast in the way, and the ass and the lion standing by the carcass, the lion had not eaten the carcass, nor torn the ass. And the prophet took up the carcass of the man of God, and laid it upon the ass, and brought it back. And the old prophet came to the city to mourn and to bury him. And he laid his carcass in his own grave, and they mourned over him, saying, Alas, my brother. And it came to pass after he had buried him, that he spake to his son, saying, When I am dead, then bury me in the sepulchre where the man of God is buried. Lay my bone beside his bones. So, while they're sitting there eating in the house, the Lord comes to the old prophet and speaks to him that because the prophet from Judah did not obey, he would not be buried in the grave of his fathers. Well, the old man wasn't any fool. He knew what that meant. This man was not going to make it out of the land. He was going to die there. So once they finished the meal, the prophet of Judah again set out for his way home. And along the way, a lion, sent by the Lord, came out and killed the man, but did it in a wondrous way, because he didn't take this young man and tear his carcass apart and eat him as we think a lion would. And he didn't even kill the ass that he was riding on, the donkey, left it alone. And there the lion sat. And people began to talk about it. None of them were brave enough to say, there's a lion, there's a dead body, there's an ass, let's get out of here. And word reached the old prophet. So he saddled up his own ass, went down there, found the prophet's body, put it upon that donkey, took it back with him, buried it in his own grave, and commanded his sons that he be buried next to this prophet when he died. Okay? So, the reign of Jeroboam does not start out in a great way. Okay? Jeroboam sinned. Okay? And that's a good reminder for us too. Jeroboam knew God's law. He knew God's promises. But it's not just a matter of believing it in your hearts. God just doesn't say, well, if you want to live over there, and as long as you know who I am and believe in me, that's all that matters. You have to be cautious of that today, students. Many in this world teach that. Most in this world teach that. There's very few that don't teach that. Most of them teach, you can worship God any way you want. It really doesn't matter. God's commands in His. You just have to love God, and that's all that matters. Okay, you can go live apart from the church, go be a hermit up in Canada, go to Mexico, go to Guatemala. You don't need a church to worship God, and you can worship God anywhere. And that's what was wrong here. The children of Israel needed to go down to Jerusalem and worship God in the proper ways which He had commanded them. Even though they may have known that there was a God, and they may have believed in God, and maybe even some of them followed the laws of God while living up there in that land, they still failed to go to the house of God and worship Him in the way that He desired. So it's a good reminder for us too to be careful that we not only believe in God, that yes is very important, but we also then, once we believe in God and know Him, then we take His Word and we study it, and we begin to realize, just like Martin Luther did when he began to study the Bible, being a monk in the church, the way I'm going about worshiping God now is not the way that's taught in His Scriptures. Something's wrong here. Do I follow the church and the Pope, or do I listen to the Bible? And we listen to the Bible, and we worship God in the ways that He's commanded in the Scriptures. And then we are blessed.